Hi, in today's video I'm going to go over the single most common problem that we get lots and lots of phone calls about, and it's with the NuTone IM or IMA4406 system. And the problem that people call me about all the time is this, where the display shows a constant IU. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, and to understand what the problem could be, you have to understand what IU stands for. On an IM or IMA4406 system, IU stands for in use. Now, one of the features of an IM or IMA4406 is a feature that NuTone called remote music control. And remote music control is a feature that's built into the 4406 Master Stations, but it's accessed through the remote speakers throughout your house. If you go over and take a look at one of your remote stations, you'll see that there are 4 intercom buttons on the station, and the very last button on the right, above the button it says End Call, but below the button it says AM, FM, CD control. So the remote music control function allows you from any remote station to turn the radio on throughout the house. You can scroll through your 6 AM preset stations. You can scroll through your 6 FM preset stations. You can turn the CD player on, and once the CD player is playing, you can change tracks on the CD. And then once you're done, you can push and hold the end call button down, and it will turn the music off throughout the house. And that's the remote music control function. While you're using that feature from a remote station, the display will show IU, in use. For some reason, someone at NuTone, when this system was designed, felt it was a good idea to make an indicator on the display that would let someone else in the house know that the system was being used, or the radio or music changes were happening deliberately instead of some random thing going on. The single most common call that we get on 4406s goes something like this. Mrs. Jones will wake up in the morning and she'll go over to turn her AM radio on and listen to the news report for the day, and what does she find? She finds that the master station shows IU. And she pushes buttons and tries things and tries to turn the radio on and tries to use the intercom and tune things, and nothing works. It's just locked into the IU mode, and then of course she doesn't know what to do. So that's what this video is about. This video is the most basic and fundamental troubleshooting video for what you do when you suddenly find your 4406, and it's both for IMs and IMAs, when you suddenly find it locked into the IU mode. There are 3 likely causes that could make a system go into the IU mode permanently. The first possible cause is an actual failure in the master station. Something in here has failed and it's locked into the IU mode, and until the failure is corrected, nothing's going to change. That's the way it's going to stay. Another possibility is there's a problem with a remote station somewhere that's connected to the system. It could be an indoor station where a button is stuck. It could be an outdoor patio station that's gotten wet inside and the metal contacts on the circuit board have corroded and are causing short circuits, and that can cause this. And the third most likely other possible cause could be that you have a short in one of the cables that connect the remote stations back to the master station. You know, if you have cables that run throughout your attic, and you had a mouse in the attic, they like to chew on the insulation of the cables, and if you have a short in the cable, it could cause this problem also. So now I'm going to show you the basic troubleshooting steps of what you can try to see if you can figure out where the problem lies. So the very first thing you should try when you find your system locked into the IU mode is you should perform a reset on the master station. Perhaps Mrs. Jones had a power outage during the middle of the night when she was asleep, and when the power came back on, the 4406 didn't come back on in an operational state. It's somewhat confused, and we need to reset the microcontroller that's inside the 4406 to clear it and send it back to its original default settings to see if the system works. So to access the reset button, you need to open the doors on the bottom edge of the master station, and you need to locate the hole where the reset button is hidden. So behind the right-hand door on this panel here, the very first switch on the panel says loudness on and off. And just to the left and slightly below the loudness switch is a little hole in the panel. So inside this little hole is the reset button. Now the reset button is what's called a micro switch. It's a very small switch, and when you push it, it doesn't move very much, but when you push it, you will feel it go click. So what you need is a really small screwdriver, or a toothpick will work fine also. I don't recommend a paper clip because it's too small and it could bend, so that's not a good choice. So take your small screwdriver or toothpick, and you insert it into the hole until it pushes up against the micro switch, and you push it until it goes click. And then you count the 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to release it, and when we release it, we need to observe what happens on the display and on the red LED lights next to the selection buttons. And what you saw, if you watched carefully, was for just an instant the display flashed 1 o'clock. It went back to IU, and if we watch here, we can see the AM LED light blink on and off several times. When it acts this way, it's unlikely that a reset's going to solve the problem. You can certainly try the reset again, but these type of symptoms showing the time for just an instant and then back to IU and the red AM light blinking on and off are signs that there's a bigger problem in the system that will require more investigation. The very first step of any kind of system-wide troubleshooting on any intercom system, regardless of the model, is you need to make a determination whether the problem is within the master station or whether the problem is being caused by something beyond the master station. So the easiest way to do that is to isolate the master station from the rest of the system so it can be tested on its own, and then we can make a determination whether it has a failure or whether the failure or the problem is being caused by something beyond the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the 4406 Master Station. There are 4 mounting screws, 1 in each corner. 2 of them are hidden behind the CD player door. I've already loosened the screws in the bottom, so we'll go ahead and loosen these. Be sure not to lose the screws, because of course you will need them later on when it's time to put all this back together. So once you've loosened the screws, oops, a little more on this side, you'll be able to slide the set away from the wall and fold it down. Once you've folded it down, you now have access to the back of the master station and the terminal board. So our job here is to isolate the 4406 Master Station from the rest of the system. So how do we do that? Well, coming off the back of the Master Station, there are 5 individual cables that plug into sockets on the terminal board. This is the terminal board. The terminal board is basically rows and rows and rows of screws, and it's where all of the individual wires from all of the remote stations are connected. And then the 5 individual cables that are plugged into the terminal board group the wires into different groups and connect them to the master station. So what we need to do is we need to unplug the 5 cables from the terminal board. Now while you're doing this, it's not necessary to turn the power off. I would recommend you don't fool around with the transformers or any of that because it's not necessary. This can all be done while the system is turned on. It's a very rugged intercom, and us real NuTone guys, we don't turn things off. So it's really not necessary to do. So all you have to do to unplug the cables is you grab them carefully and you give them a little wiggle and a pull and it comes off. So there's one, and here's the second one, and here's the third one. These are all side by side across the top. We have CN116, CN101, and CN106. And then down here, we have this wide one right here. This one also unplugs. And the last one here is CN104, and that one unplugs also. This large one over here is CN102. Now, what we have, the only things that we have left connected would be, we would have the antenna for the radio, which in this example installation is not connected because we're not playing the radio right now. And if your system has a built-in chime module, you'll have the wires connected to the chime module. That's all fine. Don't worry about that. The antenna cannot cause the problem. The chime module cannot cause the problem. It's only the remote stations that can cause the problem. So what we've done here now is we have disconnected the master station from the terminal board, from all of the wiring that runs throughout the house to all the remote stations, and therefore all of the remote stations. What we have left here essentially is a really expensive radio with a clock. There's no intercom because it's not connected to anything else, so it's just a radio and a CD player and a clock. So now that we've isolated the master station from the rest of the system, you might wonder, why does it still say IU? Well, it still says IU because the system doesn't know it's been disconnected from everything else. It doesn't know that anything has changed. It doesn't know anything. It only knows that for some reason it's locked into IU, and that's where it's going to stay. So now what we have to do is we have to reset the master station again. Anytime you make any change to the system, you have to do a reset to clear the microcontroller so it goes back to its original factory settings, and then you can see what does and doesn't work. So as you recall, and I'm just holding this up here, I didn't put the screws back in because I don't really need to. I'm just holding it up. We're going to open the right hand door. We're going to take our little screwdriver and we're going to do a reset. Now, see, I fooled you. You thought I was going to push the button, didn't you? This is a dividing point in the video. Based on what happens now, we're going to go in one of two directions. And I'm going to cover both directions regardless of what this set actually does. One path will be that the set has an internal problem, the master station has a problem, an electronic problem inside of it, and the set's going to need to be removed and sent in for repair. Or if we find that the IU goes away, then we're going to go down a different path to continue on with the troubleshooting to find out what it is that's beyond the master station that's causing this problem. So it's two paths. We're right here right now on the path, and this point on the path is it's time to do the second reset with the master station isolated from the rest of the system. If the end result of this reset is one thing, we're going to go this way on the path. If it's another thing, we're going to go on this way on the path. So I'm going to cover both of those in this video, but there's different choices based on what's going to happen right now. So it's time for a reset. So little screwdriver in the hole for the reset button, push it till it goes click, count to 5, don't count too fast, 2, 3, 4, 5, release. And guess what? It did exactly the same thing it did the last time we did a reset. It flashed 1 o'clock for an instant. It went back to IU immediately. The red LED light next to the AM button is blinking on and off. And what that tells me is that this 4406 has a problem. And it's not a problem that's being caused by the wiring. It's not a problem that's being caused by the terminal board. It's not a problem that's being caused by a stuck button on an inside remote. It's not a problem being caused by a patio speaker that's gotten wet and is all corroded inside, because all of those things have been disconnected because we unplugged the 5 cables from the terminal board. So now we know that it's a problem with the master station. And now I'm going to repair it. After I get it repaired, I'm going to come back and shoot the next part of this video, which will be path number 2. So if you recall, as a recap, before I just pushed the reset button, we were right here at the point where it was time to push the reset button for the second time, and because of the result of what happened when I let go of the reset button, we went down the right-hand path. The right-hand path, I guess you could say, the right-hand path leads straight to Northside Service Company for repair. After I get it repaired, then I'm going to simulate the problem that we had when we were here, and I'm going to show you how to go down the left-hand path, which is more work for you and less work for me, because you're going to have to do the work because it's at your house. Anyway, I'll be back later, and we'll see what happens when we go down the left-hand path. Hi, I'm back. All right, so we're gonna rewind at this point. When I left off at the last section, we had done our second reset, and the system went back to IU just as it done before, and we made the decision at that time that we were going to be going down the right-hand path, which leads to me, and I'm going to repair the unit. Now we're going to simulate what happens when we get a different result when we're at our second reset point. So now it's time to do our second reset. And we're going to do it just like we did it last time. And when we do the reset, we're going to watch what happens on the display. So just like we did before, we're going to push the reset button till it goes click. We're going to count to 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release it. And this time, we have something normal that happened. We have flashing 1 o'clock, which is exactly what you should have on a properly working 4406 system. So no more IU, no more red AM light blinking on and off and on and off. Just a normal 4406 blinking clock. We can set the time. We'll make it 3 o'clock. And if I had the antenna hooked up, we would be able to hear the radio. It's poor reception because I don't have the antenna hooked up. So what this proves to us is that if you, as a recap, the second reset that we just did was done after unplugging the 5 cables from the terminal board, which isolated the master station from the rest of the system. And then we did the second reset, and after we did the second reset, the system came back up and works normally again. So what that tells us is there's not a problem with the master station, there's a problem somewhere beyond the master station. It could be a problem with the terminal board, it could be a problem with wiring somewhere, it could be a problem with a remote station. We don't know at this point, but we know that it's somewhere beyond the master station, because when the master station is powered up and it's been isolated from the rest of the system, it works normally. So now I'm going to show you how you figure out which part of the system is causing the IU problem. To move on to the next part of the troubleshooting, you have to have some understanding about what you're going to do and what you're dealing with. So here we're looking at the terminal board. The terminal board is primarily rows and rows and rows of screws, and the cable that comes from each remote station, the wires in each cable connect to their own row of screws. So if your system was installed with genuine NuTone wire, inside your NuTone intercom cable you have 6 wires, and the way that they're referred to is you have a red pair, a black pair, and an orange pair. And that matches the markings that are on the terminal board. And the way the pairs are divided up is you have red and red with a white stripe, black and black with a white stripe, and orange with a white stripe. And that's when you use real NuTone cable. If your system was wired with some other kind of cable where the wires or the colors of the wires are different, you'll have to make a note of which wires go on which screws for each row, and that's sort of a custom thing, but it doesn't really affect the troubleshooting because the steps are the same. As I say in a lot of videos, the electrons don't care what color the wire is. It's just a matter of keeping it organized and you'll be fine. So I suggest that you take a picture of it if it's not real NuTone wire, or make a drawing and write down what the colors are so you'll remember. What you have to understand at this point is how are the wires used. And on a 4406 system, it's actually pretty simple. And this is a simplified explanation, but it's what you need to know to do the troubleshooting. The red pair, which are on the first 2 screws, and the black pair, which are on the second 2 screws, are the pairs of wires that are used for intercom operation, and that includes the remote music control functions. The orange and orange-white pairs are the pairs of wires that carry the music audio out to the remote speakers. So we're not going to be dealing with the orange or orange-white wires for our troubleshooting. We're going to be dealing with the red and red-white and black-white. And that's because for the type of problem where a remote station or a cable with a short in it is causing a constant IU problem, it's almost always either something between a red pair or the black pair of wires. It's not caused by the orange pair. So the first step to do this is you're going to have to disconnect all of the red and red-white wires and black-white wires from the screws in each row on the terminal board. Now in this example system, there are only 4 remote speakers, so it won't take that long to do. If your system has 9, then it's going to take longer. If you have an expanded system where there's another terminal board here in the blank spot, you could have up to 15 stations, and then it's going to take even longer still. But there is no shortcut in troubleshooting. You actually have to go through and deliberately do the steps and be methodical and go step by step, because if you try to skip ahead and cheat the system a little bit, you're going to miss something, and then you'll end up having to go back and do it again because you didn't do it in the right order. So the first step is to disconnect all of the red and red-white wires. And that's what I'm going to do now. So all you have to do is loosen the screws. And the way I do it is I just go through and loosen them all at one time. Fortunately, in my little system here, it's only 16 screws for 16 wires, and that's not too bad. Okay, once you've loosened all the screws, then what you can do is simply take the wires off from under the screws. So there's the one set, and the second set, and the third set, and the fourth set. Now, some people, when I tell them, so I have all these disconnected now. Some people, when I explain to them how to do this, they ask, well, isn't it easier to go to each room and take the wires off the back of the speaker in each room? And the direct answer to that is no, it's not, and no, that's not right, and no, don't do that. Because by removing the speaker in each bedroom, for instance, you're eliminating the speaker as part of the system, but the wire, the cables are still connected. So you're only doing half of the troubleshooting at that step, and you don't want to do that. So this has to be done behind the master station. The other question I get asked all the time is, well, what if I get the wires jumbled up and I don't remember where they go, and what am I going to do? Well, it's not really much of a problem because we've only disconnected, for instance, this is for column number 1, we've only disconnected the red pair and the black pair. The orange pair down here is still connected. And since the wires all come out of one cable, it's easy to know that these 4 go back on column 1 because the orange wires from that cable are connected to column 1. So it's pretty easy. The other thing about this troubleshooting is you're doing this with the system connected up and live and turned on. You can play the music if you want to. It doesn't make any difference if you rather listen to the music while you do it or not if you're really focusing on what you're doing. But you need to do this live because the reason you do it live is you're using the master station down here, master station. You're using it like a piece of test equipment. It's going to tell you things that you wouldn't ordinarily know on your own. And so you need to have it turned on. You're not going to damage anything. You're not going to blow it up. Of course, if you you ram a screwdriver into the back of the main circuit board, then maybe you got a problem. But short of that, it's a pretty rugged system. I wouldn't worry about it too much. So once you've disconnected all of the red and black pairs off the terminal board, now it's time to plug the master back into the terminal board. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug back in our 5 cables. The same ones that we unplugged when we started the troubleshooting. So there is CN102 and here is CN104. I usually do the bottom ones first because it gets them out of the way, and if you have big hands you need all the room you can get. Here's CN106, and then we do CN101 and CN116. Now the master station has been reconnected to the terminal board, to some of the wiring that goes to the remote speakers, and to part of each remote station. And what we've done now, essentially, by disconnecting the red pair and black pair wires, you now have transformed your system from a radio intercom system into what I call a music only system, because we've disconnected the intercom wires, so all you have left are the music wires, so all you're going to do is have music that plays throughout the house. So this is the first point of using the master station as a piece of test equipment, and what we're going to do is tip it up and see what the face of the master tells us. And in this close-up of the display, because that's the part we care about, our display shows that it's 3:11, just turned 3:12 in the afternoon. So what does that mean to us? Well, what that means to us is that we've reconnected the master to the terminal board by plugging the 5 cables back in, which therefore reconnects it to some of the wires that go out throughout the house, and the system has not gone back into IU. It still shows 3:12. If we turn the radio on, we have static with a little reception because of the no antenna thing, but basically the system operates as it's supposed to. So we know now that by plugging it back in, we've partially identified some of the possible problems because we've disconnected the red and black pair from each column on the terminal board. So the next step is going to be, we are going to one by one reconnect the red pair and the black pair with each column, and as we reconnect, or as we complete reconnecting each column one at a time, we're going to tilt the master back up and look and see what the display shows, because odds are one of the 4 are the ones causing the problems, and then the master is going to go back to IU, and then we're going to know it's cable number such and such that's causing the problem. I can't really do the reconnection and show you the display at the same time because I have to have the master opened up, so I'm going to go back and forth and back and forth. And just to keep this fair, I don't know which one of the 4 is causing the problem. I randomly had someone else set it up, so it's going to be as much of a surprise to me as it is to you, because I don't know which one it is. Could be any one of them. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the cable, we're going to take some of these and get them out of the way. I wish that the installer who had put this in originally, I don't know who that could have been, had left me a little more wire, but we'll deal with it. So we're going to do column number 1 first. So all you have to do is take the red wire and put it underneath the screw that says red, and it's a little hard to see. We'll tighten it down, and then we'll do the red-white wire. And then we'll do the black wire. And then we'll do the black-white wire. Now we're going to tip the master back up. Hopefully you can see it. Or not. Let's see. And what do we have? 315. So it's not number 1. So now let's go back and do number 2. So we find the cable for number 2 and we repeat. One of the things about working on intercom systems, For people that haven't done this before, when they open up their master station and they see all of these wires, it can be rather intimidating, especially if you have no idea what you're actually looking at. But once you start to identify things, it starts to become clearer and easier. And the other thing about intercom work is it's very repetitious. You know, if you're trimming out a 4406 system and you have 18 stations, when it comes time to wire up the terminal board, you wire up one row and then you do it 17 more times. So it's the same thing over and over and over again. So it's not rocket science, it's just an intercom. So now we have column number 2 set up. So we'll go back to our display and it says 316, so that's not it. So we'll go back to our terminal board and we'll do the wire for the column number 3. Alright, so that's column number 3. So we'll go back and check our faceplate. And we've got 317. See, it only takes about a minute to do each one. It's not terrible. Back to our terminal board. So by default, it's probably going to be column number 4 because that's our last one. At least it better be column number 4. Otherwise, I think somebody's punking me around here. So, red wire, red, white, black, and then black, white's our last one. One thing to be aware of on your wire, the ones with the white stripe, sometimes it's a solid white stripe, and sometimes it's like little hash marks. So you have to look carefully. It's easy to mix them up sometimes. So we'll do our black, white. And now we'll go back to our display and take a look. And what do you know? It shows IU. So what have we learned at this point? What we've learned is that when we isolate the master station from the terminal board, the wiring, and the remote stations, the master works fine. We know that when we disconnect the red pair and the black pairs off the terminal board and plug the master back into the terminal board, it still works fine. It doesn't go back into IU. And as we connected the cables for column number 1, which is speaker number 1, it was fine. And then we did speaker number 2 and it was fine. And we did speaker number 3 and it was fine. But then when we did speaker number 4, we're right back to where we started, which it shows IU all over again. So what we've learned is there is some problem with either the cable or the remote station that's on column number 4. So the next step is to figure out which of the two it has the problem. For the last 2 steps of troubleshooting, and yes, there's only 2 steps left, we have to do it on the whiteboard because I don't have room in the shop to try to set up a remote station on wire and show you how that works because it's just too complicated and you would never get the point of what we were trying to do, I'm pretty sure. So it's much easier to do it on the whiteboard. So here's a representation of our 4406 system. We have our 4406 Master Station, and over here we have a single remote station. This is the IMA4406. The remote station is an ISA445, and this particular one is speaker number 4. And speaker number 4 is our problem child. It's the one that's causing us all the problems, and it's causing the master station to show IU on the display all the time. So we know that's a fact because the system worked fine up until the time we reconnected speaker number 3, and when we reconnected speaker number 4, boom, there was our problem. So the next step is to figure out whether it's a problem with the remote speaker or a problem with the cable of wires. So the first thing we have to do is we have to figure out which room is speaker number 4. What you'll need to do is you need to tilt the master station back down again, and you need to disconnect all 6 of the wires from column number 4. You're going to disconnect the red, red, white, the black, black, white, and the orange, orange, white. That's the first time that you've disconnected any of the orange, orange, white wires, but you're going to disconnect them all. And when you do that, either your master station will go back to normal operation on its own, or you may have to do a reset on it if it's locked into the IU mode again. Odds are that when you disconnect the 6 wires for column number 4, it will go back to normal operation on its own. So then the next thing you need to do is you need to figure out which room is speaker number 4. And that will be easy to do because you can turn the music on the master station, and it will play everywhere through your house except speaker number 4, because speaker number 4 has been disconnected from its column of screws. So it's easy to tell which room that is because it's the one that doesn't play any music. Once you've located that, let's say that it's in bedroom number 1. So you go into bedroom number 1 and you remove the speaker from the wall, you turn it over onto the back, and you disconnect the 6 wires from the back of the speaker. So here's an ISA445 white, and if you turn it over on the back, you have the terminal board, and there are 6 screws, 1 for each wire. And if you look next to each screw, it's labeled as to what color wires go where. So under this screw it says red, and this one is red-white, and the center one is black, and this one is black-white, and this one is orange, and this one's orange-white. And one of the things to know is solid colors go across the top, and white striped wires go across the bottom. That's the way they always do it. So you're going to disconnect the 6 wires from the speaker. You're going to put the speaker aside, and you have to make sure that after you've disconnected the 6 wires that none of them touch each other. You're going to have bare ends of wires. There is no electricity in the wires, but we don't want wires making connections because that's what's probably causing our problem in the first place. Once you've disconnected the 6 wires from the back of the speaker and you have made sure that none of the wires are touching each other, you're going to go back to the master station and you're going to reconnect all 6 wires to the screws on column number 4. When you do that, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either the system will continue to function properly as it did with the wires disconnected, and what that tells you is the problem is not the cable between the master and speaker number 4, but it's a problem with speaker number 4 itself. And the reason you know that is because you've reconnected the wires to the system and they're not causing a problem. So the only bit that's left, the only thing that's still disconnected, is the remote station. Now, on the other hand, if you reconnect the 6 wires to the screws on column number 4 and the system immediately goes back to IU, then you know that it is most likely a problem with the cable and not a problem with the speaker. That's not an absolute guarantee. It is possible that you could have a cable problem and a speaker problem, but it's highly unlikely. If you have a wire problem, then it becomes more complicated. You have to figure out which wires are shorted, probably. Then you have to figure out, based on which wires and how many wires are shorted, you have to figure out what's the most functionality you can have with the limited number of good wires in the cable. And I'm not going to cover that in this video because I have a very extensive video in the fundamentals playlist that shows you how to measure and check wire continuity. You're checking wires for shorts and breaks to figure out what it is, and there's lots of different possible functional outcomes based on the number of wires you have. If you only have 2 good wires, you're very limited. If you have 3 good wires, you can do a little more. If you do have 4 good wires, even better. 5, I can make it work almost like you had 6, but odds are you're going to end up with 2 or 3 usually good wires. And I can't cover all that in this video, it's too complicated. So if you get to that point and you've determined which wires have shorts and you know how many wires are still good, you can get a hold of me and I'll help you figure out what's the most practical you can do with the limited number of wires that you have. In the meantime, you can simply leave the wires on column number 4 disconnected and the rest of the system will function normally, and hopefully speaker number 4 is not in a location that's a prime location that you need to use every day. The other thing that you can do, this is the last little tidbit here, is we also do know something else, and we learned it early on in the troubleshooting. We know that the system works normally with just the orange and orange-white pairs connected to speaker number 4. And if you remember, the orange and orange-white pairs are the pairs that carry the music or the audio to that station. So you could reconnect the orange-orange-white pair on column number 4, and you'll have music that plays in room number 4. You'll have the doorbell will ring at speaker number 4, and you can hear someone call to you in speaker number 4. You won't be able to answer back on the intercom, and you won't be able to initiate an intercom call here, but you at least have partial functionality until you figure out what you're going to do about the problems with the red and white pair and black and white pair. So that gives you something. So all you have to do, and that's what I would do, is reconnect the orange-orange-white pair so you have music in that room. Take the red pair and the black pair and put some tape over the bare ends of the wires so they don't accidentally touch something behind the master station, and tuck them up out of the way for the time being until you figure out what you can do with them. Then you can put your remote speaker back in. When you put your remote speaker back in, you can connect all the wires or just the orange-orange-white wires if you want to. So how's that for a really long video? That's the ins and outs of troubleshooting an IM or IMA4406 system that has a constant IU problem. I hope you find this interesting. I hope that you'll find it helpful if you have this type of problem. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube. If you like our YouTube channel and you learn things from it, please subscribe to our channel. That's all for today. See you on the next video.